Thank you, everybody, for bearing with us, and thanks for joining us. I'm David Cherner, co-founder and CEO of YOL, and we are here today to introduce our new well-being program, Mental Fitness for Teams, with program facilitator Marc Champagne. Hi, Marc.
Hello. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to jam about all things team mental fitness.
Awesome. So by way of brief introduction, Marc is a mental fitness strategist and author of the best-selling book, Personal Socrates, which I highly recommend. And he's also the host of the top 50 ranked podcast, Personal Socrates. Oh, he's also host of the top 50 ranked podcast, Behind the Human. And he also co-founded the journaling app Keo, which reached 87 million people. And for those of you new to YOL, we are a corporate learning and well-being company based in Mill Valley, California. We operate all over the world. We've been around since 2014, and we offer programs designed to help employees and teams reduce stress and burnout and increase compassion, performance, and productivity, and elevate leaders. And what we're going to do today is, first, we're going to get a little context from Marc about mental fitness, and then he'll take us through the expected outcomes and structure of the program, and then lead us in a short experiential practice. And then we'll open it up for questions, which you can add into the chat or the comments.
Awesome.
So here we go. So Marc, first tell us a little bit more about your background. How did you begin working with teams on mental fitness?
Yeah, well, it was never really the plan, to be completely honest, because I started, as you mentioned, in the app space, and having co-founded the journaling app Keo, which was very much public facing, right? And once I started working on that company and started to become more and more familiar with the practices outside of my own use, because I've been doing this for probably at least 15 years at this point, in my own personal routines and rituals, started to realize that, it doesn't matter what we're doing. It doesn't matter whether it's work, professional or personal or professional. We're all one question away from a completely different outcome or life. We're all one practice away from a completely different mood and so forth. And I remember there was one point where I was thinking, I'm like, I wish I had this stuff when I was in the corporate environment, because I spent about a decade in sales and brand management and analytics, and just remember thinking, wow, it would have been a lot lighter mentally going into that brand strategy presentation to pitch for budget for the brand, had I had some of these visualization techniques or some of the journaling techniques to just, really set up our minds, or my mind at least, to be present and in the moment. So that's when things kind of clicked for me that, well, I've been focusing on the public market, including the book and the podcast and so forth. Why not take, what I'm learning and the insights and all the stories that and narratives that support the mental fitness that continue to come from the podcast, and bring it in and use kind of my strategy background that I'm coming from to make sure that it links in the corporate setting. And that's been really fun, to be completely transparent, because, it really is a strategy job. It's really trying to figure out, okay, this team, this company, brand, this is where they're at. Here's where they're at. Here's where they're trying to get. How can the mental fitness support the team as a collective, but then also individually?
Got it. And why is this important for teams now? How will this give teams an edge, particularly in a business environment like the one we're in now, with growth slowing and a likely recession on the horizon and layoffs already happening in certain industries, obvious changing work, physical environments, et cetera? Why?
Well, I mean, to be completely, I guess, as blunt as I can, I mean, as soon as a mind stops working, so does the business or the brand or the project that you're working on, right? And I'd almost say in some cases, this is even worse when our minds are working at 50%. I mean, it's just so much harder, right? It's such a slog. We physically and mentally don't feel at our best. And it's nearly impossible to do our best thinking, right, when our minds are just jammed floor to ceiling with boxes. If you imagine like a physical room, right? You've got this room and it's just packed floor to ceiling, but you know there's something in there that you need to retract, but it's going to take all day to empty the room and find that thing. I mean, that's not very much different in terms of what happens in our minds. We have all these relationships, we have emotions, we have all the inputs from the outside world, the news, all the uncontrollable elements that just keep getting flooded into our mind, and we internalize a lot of that, right? And a lot of us, and I didn't always have these practices, so I put myself in the same camp, but we just don't have the means to release that unless there's a big event. And I mean, we've all heard of those scenarios where you reach this wall, or you start seeing physical ailments and chronic stress, and we get to this point where we just can't continue. And that's what I'm trying to help people, and why I'm excited about what we're working on together at YOL is just how do we bring in. Sure, there are practices to help on the on the acute kind of high pressure situations, like how to pause that narrative and bring in some practices to refocus and get us back on track. But I'd say most importantly, how do we bring in preventative tools so that when we are faced with these situations where we've got to make big decisions, or we don't have all the information that we would love to have, we've got budget constraints, the markets are blowing up. I mean, these are all real things that are happening. How do we handle those moments with calm, right? And with a clear lens to see the actual best step forward, and how do we take that next step? So that's why, I mean, it comes back, like, that's what lights me up about this work, because it's all accessible. Like, I'm
Mhm.
not inventing the practices. I'm not inventing questions that will help us. My job is almost like a sommelier of questions and practices to bring those things to the narratives that make sense, right? And that unlock the conversation. And then now all of a sudden, I mean, really anything's possible.
Mhm. Well, let me interject and just quickly say how excited we are to be partnering with you and adding this program to our portfolio. As some of you who are on this video know, since the pandemic began, that's when we started delivering virtual well-being programming, after doing pretty much entirely in-person stuff prior to the pandemic. And these programs included resilience programming and mindfulness and diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging programming, and some movement programs, initially designed for teams working from home, intact teams working from home. And now as we're starting to do in-person again, we've been looking to add programs such as this one that can be delivered like all of our programs now, online, offline, on-site, and off-site, to truly meet teams where they are. Marc, can you talk a little bit about what types of professionals can this training benefit? Where should this program be optimally placed within the enterprise? At what level should companies pilot it?
That's great. I mean, it's a great question, and it's a tough question, because by default, I want to say, like, really anyone that has a mind can benefit from this stuff. But I mean, I realize that's tough to figure out. Okay, well, where do we start? So maybe I was thinking about this, like maybe a reframe of where in the organization can we, or when I should say, can we bring in this kind of work? And because what I've seen work really well is usually starting some introduction mental fitness with the leadership team, just so that everyone's on board and that they understand and that they can start practicing. So then when we move into the rest of the organization, and this is what I mean by, like, when, pick those moments where either you're having your offsite, or you're having planning meetings, or whether you're leaving the office, or that's just a regular monthly touch point. Like, inject it into things that you're already doing, because I think that's where the magic is. It's not just this, at least for me, it's not just bringing in, let's just say, like a motivational speaker, which has a lot of benefit, but this is more so, how do we integrate these practices into our daily work? And by default, that's our daily lives and our personal lives as well. So if we can start your opening brand planning session, let's say, with a mental fitness activation, and bring in a couple practices to help prime the minds of the team, then that just makes the next few hours of whatever you're doing that much more productive and of quality, because the minds are primed to do so, right? So I would encourage anyone that is interested in looking at this work to try to time align it with big events or natural planning meetings and so forth that are coming up. Especially, like, we're at a good time. Like, I'm getting a lot of requests just as we're entering in the fall and winter naturally. Okay, how do we finish the year really strong? And we're also entering a naturally reflective period of the year, right? Like, we can tap into the seasonality of what's happening and do some reflection of, okay, well, where did we really rock it this year? Where would we have made some changes and so forth? And what can we celebrate, right? And finishing on the celebration. I mean, that just that alone puts your mind into a mental state of of um, possibility, right?
Very interesting. I know that a lot of people are wondering what the expected outcomes of this program are if they were to make an investment, let's say initially with their leadership team, and then
Yeah.
starting to spread it elsewhere within the organization. What can they expect in terms of outcomes?
Well, I mean, everyone individually will obviously, have different responses. I would I know I'm biased, obviously, but I've only seen positive responses just due to the nature of the work that we're talking about, right? It's like if you're taking your body to the spa, you're probably going to come out with some positive experiences and some calming experiences. And that's essentially, just naturally, just even setting up this work, it's like taking your mind to the spa and having a break from this, tumultuous environment that we're all in right now. So there's just the natural break, which in and itself has proved to be quite valuable. But then as people are experiencing the actual practices and the narrative cuts or the pauses or when you ask a really good question, like what are we pretending not to know, like that opportunity of the pause that the question provides to reflect and think about things that you may have not thought about, that in itself, you can expect to surface a tremendous amount of insight that has always been there, but we're on the autopilot of life and work that doesn't allow for that reflection to take place on a natural in the natural environment unless we prioritize it, right? So more insights, definitely clear thinking. um, I would say over time, as the preventative mental fitness kicks in, you start becoming more and more self-aware. So we start catching ourselves when we flip into negative looping patterns of, wait a second. And then all of a sudden other questions surface, like, well, what in this situation, what can I control versus what I can't? Versus getting really wrapped up in the emotion of all the uncontrollables that can hijack your day and hijack the week, frankly, right? So you start noticing those moments more. And then I think lastly, you can expect a lot of just techniques to shift from fear to courage and really to unlock the next step forward, right? And there's a ton of different practices that we'll go through that will help, whether they're questions, whether there's some breath work, to help in any of these situations. So really, I mean, on that theme, what's happening is you'll leave this with the tools to de-escalate like high charged or high pressure situations.
So you've delivered similar programs in many different instantiations over the last few years. Can you give us sort of a brief mini case study or account of just one team's experience with this training and some of their results?
Yeah, well, there's one recent that came up, and this one was in person, and I came in the night before, and I was with the team for the team dinner and so forth. And I used to work at this company, so very familiar with just the meeting process and stuff like that. And like what you would expect, people were out late having a good time and whatnot. And my mental fitness session, 8:30 in the morning the next morning, right? So we all arrived there. And I always ask this question whenever starting any session. It's just like, what's one word to describe how your mind is feeling right now? And for the and I was checking in with the same response. Tired, my eyes feel sleepy or heavy, like I'm just, low energy and so forth, because it was just a later night and so forth. And, first of all, just acknowledging how you're feeling is a step that we often don't do, and is a valuable step to realize, okay, well, this is how I'm feeling, because now I know, and you know, I can course correct, or I can make some decisions to help shift that mood. Thankfully, I was going to force that for the group, and we did 6 minutes of guided breath work together. And David, it was like I transported, and again, myself included, a whole other group of humans into the room after we were done. The room was energized, people were ready to go. I mean, selfishly, it set me up for what I wanted to, train and bring to the group in terms of the rest of the mental fitness, and then being able to answer some good questions. Um, but I think most importantly, it showed everyone that that's 6 minutes, and you can achieve that in even less, and we felt it together, versus, me saying, "Hey, here's some breath work sequences you can try. Try this at home, next when you return from your offsite. Figure out, the practices that will work for you." There's a mix of that, but let's feel some of this stuff so you can see right away that you have access to this, right?
Mhm.
So it was really fun, because the feedback that came in after the fact was uh was was surprising, in the sense that there was great comments about the actual content, obviously, and we had a good time together. But what stuck out to me was there was a lot of thanking of senior management for bringing in this kind of work, and that to me was, wow, that's a really nice sign to see that things are starting to shift, and organizations are more and more open to, just the health of our mind, right?
I love that. I love that. Why don't you take us? I'm just looking at the time here. I know we've got
Sure.
8 minutes left. So why don't you take us through the structure of the program that we're creating together, and maybe a couple of practices from the program, maybe a gratitude practice, and then we'll open it up for any questions or comments.
Sure. Well, I mean, I should say, so this program is very much, set up to be an introduction to mental fitness, assuming that this may be the first time you're exposed to this kind of work. But even if you're not, there's some good insights into what it is and what it can be for you individually, and then that comes together as a team. So we start off with some, a welcome introduction, what the stuff is, group check-in, like I mentioned. We'll all check in depending on the size of the group. If it's a large group, usually I do that in the chat, one word. It's quick. We all see a quick pulse, gets people going. Cameras on, you can start seeing the facial expressions and so forth. We'll go into some breath work, and then, like I said, people experience that, and then we'll get into a little bit more of, this is where it gets customized based on what's going on with the team and the company, and just trying to align some of these practices, which are anywhere from reflective journaling, to uncover insights, to intention settings for, let's say, new initiatives moving forward, or how you want to show up for the balance of the year for yourself and for your team, things like that. We get the group involved, sharing and communicating about things that, we just don't often talk about, right? And it's
Mhm.
just a really nice feel when you can see that happening. Um, and then, I'll get into, and so usually those practices are very much focused on in the moment, like how to depressurize situations. Then we'll get into some of the preventative mental fitness, where I'll lead the group through questions that'll help create your own individualized morning flow. We'll do it on the spot. You're not leaving this session without your own personalized mental fitness plan. And that can be anywhere from 5 minutes to as long as you want it to be. But usually we start small, simple, and effective. So 5 to 10 minutes just to get you started. And you'll notice such a huge difference in your days. And then we check out together, just like how we checked in. We check out and we have a little discussion, and usually people are sharing some of the things that came up for them in terms of, hey, like, I've always wanted to try this, or this sequence of, I like to meditate and do a bit of journaling, or I like to read, or I like to listen to this podcast. There's a bit of a group share that helps helps individuals then, tailor their own practices, which is always really nice to see, because there's no prescription to this. Like, it's not me coming in saying, hey, you need to get up an hour earlier and meditate and journal and do breath work and then jump in a cold plunge. I mean, that's not what this is. This is very much, here are the options. Now let's make sure we have a tailored flow for you individually.
Got it. Great. Why don't you take us through an experiential practice? We've got 5 minutes, so
sure.
Maybe 2 minutes, 3 minutes or something.
Sure. So let's do gratitude, because gratitude is the easiest and probably one of the most effective ways to short circuit our neurology when it comes to negative looping thoughts, or something that really irked you in the day, something that threw you off your mood off, or threw off your plan for the day. Because you can't be grateful and upset at the same time. We're not typically in both of those mood states. You're either in a thriving state or you're in a survival state, right? And so it's about, again, recognizing when we're in that survival state, when we feel fearful or anxious or upset or worried, realize that we're in that state, and then tap into a gratitude practice to flip out of it. And here's one question that works really well, and then we can all do together. The question is just this: if you close your eyes right now and think of one person, who would you like to express gratitude towards that you don't give enough credit or thanks to? And just think about who that person is and send them a text message right now while you're listening to this. And just all you have to do is say, hey, I was just thinking about you. Hope you have a great day. And what typically happens is that person receives the message. You've made their day because you're thinking about them. They typically reply. They make your day because now you're feeling good about it. And what's not happening during that whole flow is you're not numerating and not looping on the thoughts that put you into this unwanted state. And when we tap into these gratitude practices, we're gifted this what I like to call like a neurochemical cocktail of serotonin and dopamine, all the feel good emotions when we're in that state, and that just puts us back into a state that where we can do our best work and where we feel our best. So at any point, just tap in, and I to keep this practice going, an easy way to do it, whenever someone crosses your mind for whatever reason, send them a message or send them a direct, like the easier the better. If it's on social media or if it's on, it's a quick email or text message. But as soon as someone surfaces and is on your mind, say, hey, I was just thinking about you. You're being honest. But it's a great way, to keep your network alive, but also it's just a gratitude loop that just keeps on giving.
Gosh, if only the planet could hear that message, we might be in a lot better place than we are now.
Fair.
Marc, thank you so much for presenting mental fitness for teams today. Before we go further, let's see if we can, I know we've had some technical difficulties, but if anybody has any comments or questions, and you can just write it into the LinkedIn comments, they should surface on our streaming software here. I know we only have a couple of minutes, but let's see if anybody's got.
We've got, I'm not sure, like, I don't see a live video on the broadcast. It says happening now, but I do see a comment here from Jason. So I'm assuming this is streaming somewhere.
I think we are, and it will stream. It will stream in a recorded fashion for folks after we are done. Jason is on our team. Okay. So anyway, why don't we just say thank you to everybody for joining us. We are super excited about this program, which will launch in a couple of weeks. We're happy to provide more information to you about your team and how we can tailor this to your team. Just, you can reach out to Marc or I through LinkedIn, or email us at mentalfitness@experienceyol.com. That's mentalfitness@ all one word, experienceyol.com. And we will get right back to you. And you can find out more about this program on our website, and as well as other YOL programs at experienceyol.com. So thanks so much for joining us. This was our first LinkedIn Live. There's more to come without the technical difficulties. And yeah, thank you. And thank you, Marc.
Yeah, thank
Have
you.
a great rest of the week.
Here's to thriving minds.
Here's to thriving minds. Bye, everybody.